Have you ever noticed how life seems to place you in the same patterns, again and again? You swear you will never fall for the same kind of person, yet months later, you realize you are back in the same relationship dynamic, just with a different face. You promise yourself you will not make the same mistake at work, and yet somehow you do. You avoid a fear for years, only to find that it hunts you down, cornering you when you least expect it. Why does this happen? Is life cruel, or are we cursed to endlessly replay the very things we fear most? Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, would argue otherwise. He believed the answer lies not in bad luck or external fate, but in the shadow, the hidden side of our psyche that we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow is the collection of everything we deny in ourselves. It is made of our suppressed emotions, our unexpressed desires, and our unwanted traits. And though we try to bury it, it does not stay silent. The shadow has a strange, almost mystical way of showing up in our outer lives. We meet it in the people we dislike, the fears we cannot escape, and the experiences we attract again and again. The paradox is this: what we refuse to face within ourselves, life forces us to face outside ourselves. And this is why, Jung said, we often attract what we fear. Every shadow has a beginning. It does not appear overnight, fully formed. It is born quietly, in the small moments of childhood when we first learn what is good and what is bad. Think back to when you were a child. Perhaps you laughed too loudly and someone said, "Don't be so noisy." Perhaps you showed anger and were told, "Good children don't get mad." Or perhaps you expressed sadness and someone dismissed it with, "Stop crying, you're fine." In that instant, a seed was planted. A part of you, real, raw, alive, was marked as unacceptable. And so you hid it away. Not because it was evil, but because you wanted to be loved, to be safe, to belong. This is how the shadow begins. As the parts of ourselves, we are forced to push underground. As we grow older, the list becomes longer. We tuck away our jealousy, our lust, our selfishness, our doubts. We even hide our brilliance at times, our creativity, our confidence, our uniqueness, for fear of standing out too much, of being judged, of being too much for others. The irony is sharp. What we repress does not disappear. It waits. It lingers in the basement of the psyche, like old furniture covered in dust sheets. And from there, it begins to influence us in ways we cannot see. Imagine your personality as a house. Upstairs, in the well-lit rooms, you show the world your best self, polite, kind, responsible. But in the locked cellar below, everything you denied is still alive. And sometimes, something from that cellar escapes, in a sudden outburst of anger, in a sharp word you didn't mean to say, in a mistake that feels strangely inevitable. This is why people say, she wasn't herself when she did that. But she was. It was simply a part of her she had kept hidden for too long. The shadow is born the day we decide certain pieces of ourselves must never see the light. But those pieces do not die. They grow restless, and they seek expression. And here is the great paradox. The more we hide them, the more power they gain. What is unconscious becomes fate. What is denied becomes the very thing we stumble upon in life. The shadow is not a flaw in human nature. It is the inevitable cost of becoming human. To live in society, we must wear masks. But beneath every mask, the hidden face of the shadow waits. Not to destroy us, but to remind us that we are more than the mask we wear. Fear is the shadow's favorite disguise. It arrives like a warning, a tightening in the chest, a voice that whispers, "Don't go there. Don't look at that. Don't touch this truth." But if you look closer, you'll see that fear is rarely about the world itself. It is about what the world reflects back to us. Think of fear as a mirror. When you fear rejection, it is not simply other people you are afraid of. It is the hidden doubt that whispers, "Maybe I am not enough." When you fear failure, it is not the external stumble that terrifies you. It is the quiet voice in the cellar saying, "Maybe my worth depends on my success." When you fear intimacy, it is not another person's love that frightens you. It is the raw vulnerability of exposing your truest self, including the parts you've always kept hidden. In this way, fear does not only protect us, it reveals us. The shadow uses fear to point toward the very places we most need to heal. Where you tremble, there lies the door. Most people, however, do the opposite. They run. They avoid. They build entire lives designed to stay away from what frightens them. The man who fears poverty becomes obsessed with wealth. The woman who fears abandonment clings desperately to relationships. The person who fears judgment masks themselves with endless perfection. Yet underneath, the fear remains, because the shadow cannot be outrun. It waits patiently until life forces you to face the reflection. Fear is one of the clearest ways the unconscious speaks. When you recoil from something, when your body tenses, when your mind invents excuses, pay attention. Something inside you is trying to be seen. In confronting fear, we often find that the thing we avoided is not a monster at all, but a messenger. This is the work of shadow integration, to see fear not as an enemy, but as a guide. Every trembling step toward it is a step toward wholeness. And so the next time you feel fear rising, ask yourself, what is this fear trying to show me about myself? What part of me is calling out from the dark? The shadow waits patiently in the mirror of fear, not to harm you, but to hand you back the pieces of yourself you thought you had lost. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a magnet. The more energy we give to what we dread, the more it shapes our world. Jung believed that our unconscious fears leak into our daily choices, relationships, and even our dreams. What we resist persists. Think about someone who fears abandonment. They may become so clingy, so desperate for reassurance, that they suffocate the very people they want to keep. Their fear, in trying to prevent abandonment, ironically ensures it happens. Or take someone who fears failure. They avoid risks, never putting themselves in situations where success is possible. By running from failure, they also run from achievement. The fear itself becomes the architect of the reality. This is why we often attract what we fear. Fear acts like a compass, pointing us toward the very lessons we have not yet integrated. Until we face the shadow within us, we remain trapped in the cycle, repeating the same painful patterns. This is the heart of the shadow. We don't just attract our fear randomly. We attract it because life wants us to grow. It wants us to face the truth about ourselves. It may sound strange, but the shadow is not only darkness. Buried in its depths are treasures, gifts we have denied, powers we have forgotten, and energies we have suppressed. Consider a child who was always told to be quiet and well-behaved. To survive, they bury their anger, their assertiveness, their voice. As adults, they may struggle to speak up, to defend themselves, to claim their worth. Yet hidden in their shadow is the fire of courage, waiting to be reclaimed. Or think of someone who was shamed for being too sensitive. They might grow up trying to harden themselves, hiding their empathy. But beneath the surface, their sensitivity is a gift, an ability to feel deeply, to understand others, to heal. The shadow is not only the monsters we fear, it is also the gold we have left behind. Jung called this the gold in the dark. What we repress in fear may turn out to be the very strength we need to become whole. Facing the shadow does not just free us from our fears, it awakens the parts of us that were never allowed to shine. In the end, the shadow is not your enemy. It is the forgotten twin that has walked beside you since the beginning. It waits patiently, not to destroy you, but to make you whole. The fears you carry, the patterns you repeat, the darkness you avoid, all of them are not curses, but invitations. Invitations to look deeper, to grow stronger, to become more complete. When you dare to face the shadow, you discover something extraordinary. What you feared was never the monster under the bed. It was a part of you, longing to be understood. And when you embrace it, your relationships deepen, your creativity expands, your energy shifts. Life begins to feel less like a battlefield and more like a path toward integration. Carl Jung once said, Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is the challenge before you. Not to run from your shadow, but to walk with it. Not to suppress your fear, but to transform it. Not to conquer yourself, but to become yourself. So the next time you find yourself haunted by what you fear most, remember this: you do not attract it because you are cursed. You attract it because deep down you are ready to heal. The shadow is the teacher. Fear is the doorway. And on the other side is freedom.